Okay, guys, this is our test we just took on quadratic modeling. Some of you really need to go over and look at some of these problems again before they show up on a final exam. So here we have a quadratic model. This is a parabola for the number of users of Facebook. T is measured in the number of years after 2010. Okay, so in the year 2010, T is equal to 0. So if you figure out what f of 0 is, that's just going to be 400. So there are 400 million users of Facebook in 2010. In what year does the model predict the peak number of users? Okay, this is a parabola that opens downward. So if this is my time and this is my number of users, this question is just code for go find the vertex. That's going to be the peak number of users. So T is going to be equal to, how do you find the axis of symmetry? It's negative b over 2a. So that's negative 370 over 2 times negative 2. 2 times negative 23. And this is about 8.4043. So that's the number of years. Okay, what did the question say? The question was in what year? So if you take the year 2010 and you add 8.043 to it, you get the year 2018. Okay, so that is the year 2018. What is the peak number of users? Well, that just says plug in 8.043 into this function. So when you plug that in your calculator, you're going to get about 1.88 billion. And some people didn't convert it. You could also say, leave it in millions. Facebook first reached 750 in 2011. In what year will the model predict it will reach 750 again? Well, all I have to do is just set that equation equal to 750. Negative 23t squared plus 370t plus 400. I'm in luck because my calculator knows how to do this. The calculator wants this thing set equal to 0. So minus 23t squared plus 370t plus 400 minus 750. So let's go to the calculator for that one. So menu, algebra, complex polynomial roots. So my equation is negative 23t squared plus 370t plus 400 minus 750. And then you just have to say what the variable is. So comma t. And so that's 1.09. So t is equal to 1. What was it? 009 and 15.07. Make sure those are right. 1.009, 15.07. Well, 1.09, that's the year 2011. We already knew that one. The next year is going to be, well, 2010 plus 15.07. That's the year 2025. Okay. So again, I gave you the quadratic model. What did I ask you for? I asked you what f of 0 is. I asked you for the x coordinate of the vertex. I asked you for the y coordinate of the vertex. I asked you to set it equal to 750 and solve it. Okay. Give the equation of the parabola that fits through these points. This is negative 4, 5. This is 2, 0. And this is 7, 4. Well, we learned how to do that last unit and this unit, how to find a model given data points. So what I'll do there is I will create a new data and statistics, create a new list and spreadsheet. So I'm going to have my x points and I'm going to have y points. And so those x coordinates and y coordinates are going to be what? Negative 4, 5. So negative 4 and 5. and what, 2, 0, 2, and 0. And then the next one was 7, 4. 7, 4. And then I got a couple ways to do it. I can create my data and statistics. I have my X values, and then I have my Y values, and I just do menu, analyze, regression, quadratic. So that's 0.148 x squared, so 0.148 x squared, and then minus 0.536x, minus 0.536x, and plus 0.478. So just using the calculator to come up with a quadratic model is the skill there. This is a projectile motion. So remember, we had a formula, h of t is equal to -1/2 gt squared plus the initial velocity times time plus the initial height. So in this problem, g is 32. The initial velocity. It says that the initial velocity is 10 feet per second. The initial height. She's launched from 30 feet high, so the initial height is 35. So this equation is h of t equals minus 16 t squared plus 10t plus 35. Now it's going to ask me some questions about this particular model. What is Barbie's height after 1 second? So plug in a 1 for t, and you get minus 16 plus 10 plus 35, and so that is 29 feet. At what time is Barbie at the maximum height? So she starts out at 35 feet, she goes up, she comes down. So at what time is she at her maximum height? That's going to happen at the axis of symmetry. So t is going to be equal to negative b over 2a. So that's going to be negative 10 over 2 times negative 16. So that's 10 over 32, or 5 over 16. If you did this in decimals, that's 0.3125 seconds. What is the maximum height? Well, the maximum height occurs when I plug this number in to the equation. So h of 0.3125 is negative 16. 0.3125 squared plus 10 times 0.3125 plus 35. And I will go straight to my calculator for that. So on a calculator page, we do negative 16 times 0.3125 squared plus 10 times 0.3125 plus 35. And I get 36.56. So this is 36.56 feet. How much time will elapse until Barbie hits the ground? She hits the ground when the height is 0. So you basically just set this equation equal to 0. And you should know by this point, we go straight to our calculator, menu, algebra, polynomial complex. So negative 16 t squared plus 10t plus 35, comma, t, and negative 1.19 and 1.82. The one that makes sense is the 1.82. So Barbie will be in the air for 1.82 seconds. Okay, the next problem had you pull together some couple things we've done this semester. So a student walks into a bar, stays for 3 hours. Alcohol intoxication is measured by the blood alcohol content. Legally, 0.08 is considered to be intoxicated for individuals over 21 in the state of Georgia. The effects of alcohol may vary and the timing intensity is not always predictable. The model shows that for the first 2 hours, the effects of drinking slowly increase with a linear model. After 2 hours, the effects begin to increase more rapidly following a quadratic model until the effects wear off after 6 hours. So I've given you data and I've given you a graph, and I want you to come back with the equation, okay? So the first part that is in red, that is a line that goes through the point 0, 0, and it goes through the point 2.05. So if I figure out, all I need is, that's a line, so if I go y equal mx plus b, you know that b is 0, it goes through the origin. What's the slope of this line? Well, if you go up 0.25, so up 0.25 over 1, the slope of that line is 0.25. So this is just 0.25t. That is the first part, and that's valid from 0 to 2. Now the next part is a parabola. Well, what do we do with parabolas? How do we figure the equation? Well, if I give you 3 points, you can come up with a parabola. So let's just go back to our list and spreadsheet. Where did I have that? And let's just put those points in. So those points would be at 2 and at, so 2.05 and at 4.088, 4.088, and at 6, 0. So let's come up with the equation for this guy. So I can just go back to my data element here. And you see the equation right there. Negative 0.0157. So negative 0.0157 t squared. And then it is plus 1135t plus 0.1135t minus 0.114. Minus 0.114. That's the quadratic model for the blue parabola that you see there. At what time is the alcohol's effect at its maximum? That's code for go find the x-coordinate of the vertex. So negative b over 2a, that's going to be negative 0.1135 over 2 times negative 0.0157. And when you find that, that turns it out to be about 3.6 hours. During what time frame is the individual at or above the legal limit for intoxication? Well, we know that the legal limit according to that problem is 0.08. So let's just set this equation, negative 0.0157 t squared plus 1135t minus 0.114, set that equal to 0.08. Well, in my calculator, I need it set equal to 0. So 157 t squared plus 1135t minus 0.114 minus 0.08 equals 0. And I'll just go to my calculator and make that work. So menu, algebra, polynomial, complex roots. So negative 0.0157, negative 0.0157 t squared plus 0.1135 t, and then minus 0.114 minus 0.08 comma t. So this happens, so it tells me that I'm reaching the value of 0.08 with 2.77, and the other value was 4.45. So what's happening here is you've got a parabola that does this. Here's 0.08. It tells you you're above the intoxication limit between 2.77 and 4.45 hours. What is the blood alcohol content 1 hour after you walk into the bar? Well, 1 hour after you walk into the bar, that's half of 0.05, so that is 0.025. A ball is dropped off the top of the Empire State Building. This is projectile motion. H of t is minus 1/2 gt squared plus velocity times time plus initial height. Okay. If it's dropped off, the initial velocity is 0. The height is 1250 and g is 32. So the equation is h of t equal minus 16 t squared plus 1250. Okay. How much time will elapse before the ball hits the ground? It hits the ground when the height is 0. So negative 16 t squared plus 1250 equals 0. Go straight to my calculator. So menu, algebra, complex roots, negative 16 t squared plus 1250, comma, t. And it tells me that's negative 8.83 and 8.83. So making sense of that, 8.83 seconds. Now, if the ball were thrown downward with a velocity of 10 feet per second, what would the governing equation be? Well, the equation would change. Negative 16 t squared. If the velocity is thrown down, it's negative 10 t plus 1250. If the velocity was projecting it up, that would be positive. So to hit the ground, I just need to set this thing right here equal to 0. So go back to my calculator. Let's just modify that same command that we just used. So all I need here is just minus 10t and solve that and you get 8.53. So does it make sense that it hits the ground quicker if you throw it versus drop it? Yes. So that is the solution there. Okay. And then the bonus question. Let n be a quadratic equation that models the statement below. The product of the prior odd integer and the next even integer is 108. So n is my integer. Okay. So what is the next odd integer and the next even integer? Okay, so if n is even, the one right before it is odd. So n minus 1, that's the prior odd integer. If n is even, n plus 2, that's the next even integer. So n minus 1, n plus 2, these things multiply to 108 according to this problem. And then when you look at that, you're going to have n squared plus n minus 2 equal 108. N squared plus n minus 110 equals 108. Okay. Sorry. Once I subtract that over, equals 0. Now you could factor this, but hey, you've got a calculator. So menu, algebra, complex roots, n squared plus, this is n squared plus n squared plus n minus 110, comma, n. N is equal to minus 11 and 10. Now, if you look at this, what do we say n was? N was an even integer, so I didn't take off for this, but I don't think anyone got the bonus. So in this case, n has to be 10 to make this work. Okay?